Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and I'm trucking right along with the Battle of Chickamauga, and I will start covering one of the most talked about moments of the battle, Longstreet's breakthrough. The morning attack so far had revolved around George Thomas fending off Confederate attacks on the Union left flank. Naturally, he called for reinforcements from Rosecrans, which Rosecrans sent to him. Around 10:30 a.m., Captain Sanford Kellogg, Thomas's nephew and aide, rode to General Brannan and delivered instructions for him to move his division north. Brannan consulted with Joseph Reynolds, another division commander, and concluded that Reynolds could hold the ground alone, but that Brannan's move would expose his right flank, and they asked Kellogg to inform Rosecrans. Kellogg left, and Brannan and Reynolds changed their minds about leaving, but did not inform Kellogg or send an additional courier to relay the message. When Rosecrans heard about the gap that would emerge, he sent orders to General Thomas Wood to close up on Reynolds and support him. The order was confusing because the term close up on would mean to link his flank with Reynolds, but the word support would mean for him to get behind Reynolds. Wood was confused by the order because he didn't know that Brannan had been ordered away, so the order must mean for him to fall in behind Reynolds and Brannan. The Union commanders were mostly unaware of the significant repercussions of the movement. Buell was the most leery of moving out from his position. His 100th Illinois, without orders, advanced across the Lafayette Road and came face to face with the Confederate juggernaut. The sight and musketry led them to fall back to the Brotherton cabin. As they pulled back, the brigades of Barnes and Harker began making their way to the rear and north. The last to leave was Buell. He brought with him all but 2 companies of the 100th Illinois who remained near the cabin. On the Confederate side, Braxton Bragg had become anxious because his dawn attack had not materialized, so he instructed one of his staffers to order the divisions into battle, bypassing the chain of command. Except for Alexander P. Stewart's division, which got the order to move forward first, Longstreet held all of his divisions back until he gave the word. At around 11:15 a.m., Longstreet ordered in his divisions, one right behind the other. McNair's brigade ran up against the solid wall of blue formed by the brigade of Colonel John M. Connell. The other brigades found little to no resistance as they advanced across the Lafayette Road. Buell hadn't gotten too far when the Confederates advanced. To buy the rest of the brigade and artillery time, the 26th Ohio and 13th Michigan were turned to face the Gray troops. The day before, the 2 regiments had suffered dearly and were badly under strength. It took only a few minutes for the 2 Union regiments to collapse and head to the rear. As Confederate troops streamed across the Lafayette Road, Union commanders began trying to stall the advance. To the south, Alexander McCook ordered Jefferson C. Davis's understrength brigades into the fight to stop the Gray tide from advancing any further. The first Confederate troops they came into contact with was the Alabamians of Brigadier General Zechariah Dees. The sudden flash of musketry sent the Alabamians back to the road looking for cover. Unfortunately for Davis's men, their good luck would run out as more Confederates swept over their flanks. Part of Shug's brigade, the 7th Texas, 1st Tennessee Battalion, and 10th Tennessee, hit Martin's brigade in the flank. Seeing the support, Dees charged Carlin and Martin's brigades. Every Union regiment came under intense pressure from the charge. The 21st Illinois on the far right of Carlin's line began to buckle and then break under the pressure. It was the first in a chain reaction as the overwhelming numbers became too much for the battered Union regiments. The rest fell back as well. On the Union right, the Confederate brigades ordered forward by Longstreet were charging into the rear of the Union line. To the north, McNair kept assaulting Connell's troops to the west of Poe Field. Shug told McNair to hold his position and he would swing around to the Union flank. Shug's attack completely surprised the Federal troops, caving in the 17th Ohio, who began to run through the Union lines that lay in reserve. Some of Samuel Beatty's regiments turned to counter the Confederate strike, but held out for only a few moments, but they were able to save some artillery pieces, while others fell into Confederate hands. McNair and Shug pushed westward, not concerning themselves with the Union force to the north. Their orders were to press up behind the Confederate brigades in their front and offer support. When Benning's brigade marched just south of Colonel John Croxton's brigade, the Georgian became concerned for his and the attacking party's right flank. Benning swung his brigade northward, facing the 4th and 10th Kentucky of Croxton's brigade, which Croxton dispatched from their support role. The Georgians advanced past the burning Poe house and through some breastworks that had caught on fire. Benning's horse was shot out from under him. Around that same time, Croxton went down with a leg wound. Colonel William Hayes of the 10th Kentucky would take command of the brigade during the brutal close-range fight, with both sides throwing lead into one another's ranks. Hayes could look southwest and see another brigade of Confederates approaching his flank, so he ordered the brigade to fall back, but word did not spread to the 74th and 10th Indiana, who still fronted the Lafayette Road. The Confederate brigade approaching the flank was the Texas Brigade under Jerome Robertson. When the Hoosiers saw the Kentuckians leave, they charged south, stunning the Georgians. The Confederate brigade was sent back in great confusion. Benning, mounted on a stray artillery horse, rode up to Longstreet and exclaimed to the commander that "I am ruined. My brigade was suddenly attacked and every man killed. Not one is to be found. Please give me orders where I can do some fighting." Longstreet responded, "Nonsense, General. You are not so badly hurt. Look about you. I know you will find at least one man, and with him on his feet, report your brigade to me, and you too shall have a place in the fighting line." Further north, as the Union line was crumbling in that direction, General Reynolds attempted to shore up his line by turning Turchin and Edward King's regiments to face the Confederate threat to the south. Harker's brigade halted Robertson's Texans for the moment, giving the Union troops around Kelly Field a rest. Reynolds, not knowing his front was somewhat void of active Confederate regiments, wanted to buy himself some time in order to reconfigure his regiments, so he ordered the 105th Ohio to charge. The regiment passed through Poe Field, over the dead and wounded of the Confederate attacks in that area. Then they scraped by Benning's Georgians, moving through Brotherton Field. Reynolds thought the entire regiment completely destroyed until he found them at Rossville the next day, having maneuvered through the Confederate brigades of Longstreet's attack without encountering any stiff resistance. Longstreet's attack had shattered the Union line, resulting in Union division and brigade commanders attempting to hold what ground they could. The move by Wood's division was nearly lethal to the Army of the Cumberland, but many brigades and divisions were holding their ground as the gray tide swept over the battlefield.